think the really strong pull there is that it's almost universally agreed in the gaming market that you have to have some type of rewards benefit that keeps a long-term retention rate. And it's becoming much more difficult with existing rewards that have been duplicated so many times already. So they're looking at the next big thing. And I think that's going to be a marriage of some type of currency that's unique to the system, some type of free to own NFT that's completely backed by the company, but starts to earn some type of rewards depending on the actions that you take in the game.
It is a super special day here at Mobile Heroes Uncensored. Usually we're chatting with mobile heroes, and guess what? Today we're doing that too. But usually we're chatting with one or maybe two. Today we have three, and also usually we have single brand mobile heroes working for one particular company. Today is agency day, and we're chatting with people who have a slightly different perspective. They've got multiple clients. Some are high volume, some have different needs, some are medium or lower volume. They've got varying challenges. So welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored. My name is John Koetsier, and our co-host, as always, of course, is Peggy and Salz. Peggy, who are we chatting with today?
Well, we got a crowd, don't we, here, John? I'll start off, as you said, all from agencies. We're celebrating agencies in this particular episode. I'll start off with Eddie Yoon, who is Senior Director Paid Media at NP Digital, where he leads the paid social and creative departments. And NP, in case you didn't know it, John, stands for Neil Patel, right? The digital marketing thought leader of the same name. This is the agency that he founded. Throughout his career, Eddie has managed more than $1 billion spend on social media ads. And he knows what works from both sides because Eddie, like many in this space, was a veteran in the gaming space. So he's a gaming executive with over 10 years of marketing experience and mobile app industries. And here he is in an agency. He's excited about Web3 and blockchain and gaming, and we're going to be excited to hear more. So welcome, Eddie.
You know, Peggy, it's amazing. There's not many people who have D2C, direct to consumer, B2B, and mobile app marketing experience. That's pretty cool.
He rolls it all into one, and wait to hear about the future of metaverse later, John. All of it here. And we have Dave Riggs, co-founder Apex Growth. Now, Dave is a programmer turned marketer and co-founded a digital marketing agency, Apex Growth, formerly known as Customer Acquisition. And he and his team of performance marketers, data analysts, creative strategists, product managers, he's brought them all together to help clients, including Shopify, Amazon. You have a long list. I won't get to it all, Dave. You'll probably tell us about it. But you're offering them, of course, paid marketing, conversion optimization, reporting, analytics assistance. It's a lot to juggle, I was thinking. But Dave is a pro, John, because he can literally juggle 5 objects at once. And that includes 3 flaming torches.
And corporate names. I was familiar with customer acquisition, and I had to do a double take there for a second with Apex Growth.
Yeah. He's there. And his colleagues did a little research, right? In LinkedIn, they say they have lucked out by having the opportunity to have him as a manager and a mentor. And I would say we lucked out too, John, because we have him on our show today. So welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me.
Finally, Jonathan Yantz, or John, just to confuse you, John and John. Managing partner, M&C Saatchi Performance, of course, a digital marketing agency telling the human side behind the data. Jonathan brings a decade plus of experience with media strategy and execution across the entertainment, education, retail, and hospitality industries. He also specializes in user acquisition, ROI, consumer engagement, and he's here today to provide us insights into how to get the best and the most out of current and emerging platforms, while, of course, navigating our privacy landscape. And it can test your mettle. And Jonathan, I think, is up for the challenge because his colleagues say of him, and I will quote, quote, he will not stop until his work reflects the very best of his abilities. So we know, John, he's going to give it his all today. Welcome, Jonathan. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you all.
So pumped to have you all. Thank you all for joining. Wow, Peggy, take a breath. That was the longest introduction ever.
I know, but you've got three amazing people. You just
that
have to
is
do it.
true.
Usually we have one amazing person, but no, we have to tell their stories.
Yeah. 3X. Yep. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, Jonathan. Welcome, Eddie. Super pumped to have you guys. The amount of expertise right now in this virtual room is off the charts. I want to start here. It's something that you have all dealt with for the past 18 to 24 months, and you're going to be dealing with, frankly, for the next few years. Talking about privacy, we're talking about app tracking, transparency, ATT. We aren't not even mentioning right now, but you know what? Privacy Sandbox for Android is coming up. How have you guys stayed effective in this? Maybe, Eddie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think in terms of the privacy measures, I mean, the team has adapted in terms of just going back with Apple kind of rolling out all of those big updates. And I think that's allowed the paid media teams to kind of optimize down the entire funnel, whether it's making sure that the data and the analytics are also providing another resource to have additional data. But it's also kind of been a blessing in disguise because it's allowed all of the teams to work together. So it's brought the marketing teams, the product teams, and the data teams together and helped build a more cohesive funnel. And in turn, relaying that data back to the product team, it's also allowed them to build better products and to have the clients just think outside of the box. Maybe there's different ways to have more revenue streams or to have more upsells. So it's usually led to more out of the box thinking. In terms of how to adjust with privacy measures, I think that's going to be an ongoing trend in the future that a lot of paid media teams shouldn't really be afraid of, because at the end of the day, it loops back to the basics of marketing. Is the creative performing well? If it's performing well, you can still kind of look at just the ground level engagements, go back to the customers and see what works, and then relay that back and just make sure all the technical side is working well, and just making sure that you're staying as close as you can to the internal and external dev team. So overall, I think it's something that's not going to go away, but if teams can adapt, then there's always going to be thriving businesses in all markets.
Dave, let's turn to you. Eddie's making lemonade out of lemons and doing pretty well. How are you adapting?
Yeah, it's one of the tactics that we've used, to Eddie's point about thinking out of the box, is like a web to app funnel. So instead of sending traffic directly to the App Store for iOS, we can send it to web, where we're able to track things better, do cohort reporting, and then have that web traffic go into the app funnel. That actually works well for one of our clients. Another case this is a little bit of an extreme example, but with one of our clients, we just pretty much shut off all iOS and then redirected all of our effort into Android and web, and really spent some time increasing the monetization of web and Android. And Android users were a little bit lower quality in terms of the revenue, but they're also lower cost. And so by focusing on bringing down that cost, but bringing up the revenue as well, we could take our iOS dollars and move them over to Android and web and do that pretty effectively. And then the last thing is, with
thanks
one of our
a lot,
clients,
Dave. You're one of the guys who drove up the costs on Android. Perfect.
We did actually with one of our clients. I mean, it literally was over $1 million a month. We took from iOS and moved it over to Android. And so I'm sure that the other guys are doing the same thing. But really, with the main thing is also with incrementality testing too. And so we spend a lot of time really trying to understand the true value of users, and that also helps with the iOS 14.
Did you find that the extra trackability and measurability of going the web to app step outweighed the loss in just extra clicks and conversion from those steps?
It took some time, and it was painful for a while because, like you said, you're basically introducing an additional layer of friction. But we spent so much time with conversion optimization. Over a quarter of our team are engineers and product people. And so we just spent a lot of time building out these flows and running tests. And then we got it to work in one case.
Nice. Jonathan, same question to you. How have you adapted with ATT?
Yeah, I think similarly with Dave, we also did go quite the incrementality testing route. That has definitely proven pretty effective. It's definitely a longer term play. You have to constantly, to some degree, reevaluate. However, when you're able to isolate geos is typically one way we go about it. That can at least inform you quite a bit. I think the other two key areas are definitely around creative testing as well as App Store optimization for us. So on the creative testing side, with losing a lot of retargeting, lookalike type models, we really are going after a much more broad audience who we have less control over exactly who they are. So we do a lot of testing to start to figure out different mini segments, different pocket audiences who at least are responding, and we can draw some conclusions based on the creative we're serving that, oh, they might be someone who would react well to this type of thing. So what do we do with that? What's the next variable? Then we tweak down the line. And then with ASO, just it's a bit obvious on the mobile side, but of course, just making sure that the App Store listings are your landing page and they're just as important as a website. And so making sure that we're constantly testing and evolving there, especially as Apple's slowly been rolling out some additional things around custom product pages, eventually the Today tab coming up, things like that.
Super interesting, Jonathan. And that probably has an impact. I mean, you talked about broader targeting because you can't micro target. That probably has an impact on what kinds of apps can be successful or how an app needs to appeal to an audience to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you're considering going from an ad on social directly to the App Store. And we'd want to make sure that there's some kind of parity there. So is it broad targeting with a broad landing page experience, for lack of a better word, when you get to the App Store? Or we're starting to work on using those custom product pages to at least better align the creative without disrupting the overall organic presence on your App Store.
Love to hear more about that. But I will move over to you, Dave, for just a moment, because you are working with huge companies, huge budgets, multi-million-dollar monthly budgets, eye-watering budgets. How are you advising them on this, on the privacy challenge, but also how to scale?
Again, I think you have to think outside the box and really focus on some of the the web to app flows, or to Jonathan's point, really focusing on creative. Creative testing is really important. Incrementality testing, so running campaigns in California versus Florida and kind of seeing the different effects and trying to isolate it via different geos. Those kinds of tactics work quite well. There's really not a lot of other options. You got to work with what you have.
Interesting. I'm thinking about the differences between California and Florida now. Totally different creative, totally different worlds, I would think. Eddie, you're looking at gaming customers who are scaling. He's at the multi-million-dollar level. You're looking at startups, a little bit scrappy, also very exciting. The next big blockbuster title is out there. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, there's been a lot of very interesting trends in the mobile app gaming space. I'd say looking at the last 5+ years, that's kind of when you started seeing like a lot of the inspiration games that looked at the early Candy Crushes. They looked at the other Match 3 games. I think the era of taking an aspect that already exists and twisting it is going to be much more difficult in the near future because there's so many companies that around the world, they're already looking at the App Store. They've created near duplicates, pretty much just changed the title and introduced new characters. I believe that over the next 5 to 10 years, that the strongest companies are going to implement some aspect of blockchain into their existing platform, whether it's going to be natively integrated or on the tech side on the back end. But what's happening right now in the market is that there's a big divide. There are the enthusiasts who already understand crypto more for the financial benefits, the potential benefits there. But there's also the gaming enthusiasts, the traditional game executives who come from the world of creating console games, PC games, mobile games, who are looking very seriously into this. And they're testing right now whether it's going to be implementing an existing blockchain or creating some type of native currency. But I think the really strong pull there is that it's almost universally agreed in the gaming market that you have to have some type of rewards benefit that keeps a long-term retention rate. And it's becoming much more difficult with existing rewards that have been duplicated so many times already. So they're looking at the next big thing. And I think that's going to be a marriage of some type of currency that's unique to the system, some type of free to own NFT that's completely backed by the company, but starts to earn some type of rewards depending on the actions that you take in the game. And once they start doing that, they will probably have the most loyal fan base, and they will be able to create any types of games beyond that. So they're really trying to create the next, almost the 2K series. If you talk to 2K fans, some of them have been playing for years and years and years, and they just will play every single title after that. And the next mobile app game is trying to do the exact same thing.
Super interesting, Eddie. I think we should have a whole show on that. Exactly. This is a note for the future. Do a show on blockchain. I mean, obviously, it's one thing for a company to whatever you earn, whatever you buy, whatever you own in one game that we own, you can also use in another game that we've also published. It's also very interesting to think about, can I take something from Clash of Clans over to Candy Crush? Does that make any sense? Is that even possible? Does it work? Is it potentially a tie-in between two different publishers? So much to dive into there. Probably can't get super deep into that right now, but I want to turn to Jonathan, still sort of on the privacy thing right now, but we know Privacy Sandbox for Android is coming. We know that's happening. What are you thinking? What are you doing right now? Are you doing the Dave Riggs strategy? Get all the Android right now. Shift millions over there while we have GID. Or what are you changing with Privacy Sandbox?
Well, I would be lying if I said we didn't do the Dave Riggs, quote unquote, move to Android in the early days in preparation for iOS ATT. But I think now we've learned a lot over the last year plus at this point that can definitely be likely directly converted into how we approach what Google will roll out. Since, of course, it seems to continue to get pushed back, I believe the latest is now 2024. Now is the perfect time, I believe, for every brand to be focusing on it. So what can we do, whether it's from a testing standpoint, to learn as much as we can about our user flow, optimize it as much as we can while we have data. If you're a new app that's starting out, or whether you're doing a full rebrand, if you have that anywhere in the pipeline, try to do it now. Try to learn while you can. Of course, similar to web with cookies going away, etc. But I think if we start to look at what we've learned so far from iOS and from Scan and how that's going to continue to evolve, we can probably assume that Google will also iterate over time, because Scan 4.0, very different than what the original looked like. And so we'll probably assume there's some iteration of privacy thresholds. So how can you build that into your model now? In order to gain some learnings, because that was definitely one of the early days, kind of everyone scrambling in a sense to reach those thresholds and figure out, oh, we have to move up funnel in order to get the volume, in order to get some kind of information. So just really basing everything you've learned so far from ATT to Privacy Sandbox and making those assumptions that it'll be similar enough, that's probably the best way now, because it's a bit too far off to really know the ins and outs, nitty gritty.
Jonathan's super smart. I remember in the early days when Apple had said, hey, Scan is coming, ATT is coming. It's not quite here yet, but it's coming. And I was literally begging with people, hey, do other forms of measurement, do lots of modeling right now, see how it works. Even though you don't have to use Scan right now, see how it works and compare what you're getting with IDFA and do some learning there so that when it absolutely hits and it's the only thing, you're actually way ahead of the curve. Dave, are you doing anything like that for Privacy Sandbox or Android?
Yeah.
Are you doing more MMM or other things like that?
Well, I think one way to stay ahead of the curve is really focus on conversion and monetization as well. And so when you're restricted by the ability to track users, you're going to need a higher converting app. Eddie brought up some interesting points, because I do believe there is going to be a lot of Web3 integrated into gaming later. The proliferation of being able to give tokens or currencies very easily. So by increasing monetization and really focusing on your funnel inside your app, making sure that everything from the install to the registration to whatever events you're targeting is really, really clean and really, really focused. When privacy restrictions come later, in 2024 or whenever for Google, you're going to be a little bit ahead of the game because your app monetization is going to be higher. So we try to advise our clients to do this. As you'd imagine, our clients take a long time to get certain things like this done, but it's really important to be focusing on conversion and monetization because that's going to help when tracking starts to go away.
Loving this conversation. It's so constructive, John, So different from the conversations that we're like, well, we don't know what we're doing or we're just experimenting. No, there is a strategy here. And there's the acceptance, right? Precision, targeting, maybe history, but we're going to get on with it. We have to reach specific segments, niche audiences. And hey, that's where the ad creative takes the lead. And you said that yourself, Jonathan. You're very focused on that. It's not just letting the ad creative take the lead. It's having the ability to pick the winner, right? And then support them. Maybe with paid, maybe Spark ads on TikTok, for example. I'd like to understand more about how you determine if an ad has what it takes to be a viral success in the first place.
I think there are two things to unpack there. First, I think in the viral sense is definitely something that I think we're personally a little less focused on now, just because I think there's a huge relevance of when you get people to share, but just want people to maybe have the mindset of expecting more conversations and sharing and less so, oh, I have this meme of the moment and then you're just a blip in that moment and long forgotten. I think it's building a community and people talking and sharing, eventually, ideally, organically, that's really able to help, at least from a performance media standpoint. And I think on the other side, that is kind of exactly what we do. For TikTok, when we're engaging creators, we typically have a variety of them post organically, start to see how their following reacts, what their engagement rates, their comments, their shares, all of that looks like, and then start to choose the winners. So whether that's they surpassed the average, and so therefore we'll add them in as Spark ads and rotate them in. The creator space is actually something that we have an ongoing sort of evergreen presence and strategy with for a variety of the brands we work with. So kind of having that pipeline ready to make new creative, whether it's based on the next upcoming season, getting ready for fall, getting ready for holiday shopping, and just starting to get ahead of the curve and have them ready to go. I think that's been really helpful. I think it just really ties into the word of mouth. That is something that we've been seeing in media and marketing and PR for years. And this is kind of how it looks for a younger generation. Of course, they realize that these people are being paid. I think that everyone understands that at this point. But when you're working with those smaller to more niche influencers who have a truly engaged following because they feel like the person they're following gets to have a say in the brands that they work with and kind of curate the brands they work with. And that makes it feel more authentic, even though there's a transaction involved.
And especially if they actually do the creative themselves, like they get a bit of a brief or they get an idea, but they actually create something themselves and do something really cool. We've seen very cool things like that. And Peggy and I chatted with somebody, I think about a month ago or so, who said that on TikTok, they got more organic distribution than paid distribution with their ad, which was really, really cool. Eddie, I want to turn to you. We talked a little bit about scaling here or there. You did a blog post on the Mobile Heroes Uncensored blog for Liftoff, and you have a checklist about finding ad creatives at scale. And you scaled some of your clients to 8 figures a month, which is pretty significant. What are your top do's and don'ts for that?
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of different ways. The ones that we focus on is definitely the hook. So within the first 2 to 3 seconds, we determine what's the actual story that's working to engage the user. Sometimes it can be clickbaity, sometimes it can be actually reflective of what's going on, but you have to capture the user within the first couple seconds or we generally see a significant drop off. So from that 2 to 3 second mark, we tracked the velocity of KPIs. So we tracked the users that hit at least 3 seconds, and whoever reached 5, 7, 10 seconds how fast did they actually click on the ad? How fast did they convert in terms of installing? And then how fast did they open up the app and then trigger the first revenue event? So we started pulling that data, and I've seen a lot of the teams build almost proprietary reporting platforms that show the exact velocity of users, and they mapped it to the LTVs, and they were able to create very strong lookalike audiences of whales, and they cut up those audiences, and then they use that to inform the next batch of creatives. But I'd say the two types of creatives that have worked extremely well in the gaming industry, and it's very interesting that it still works, is almost a creative that does not even reflect the accuracy of the game itself. And I'm sure that everyone here on this panel has seen a lot of different titles where they're almost creating new games just to show in the ads because they work so much better than actually showing a video of what the game really is, right? And it doesn't make sense when you look at that, but it works so much better. And then the focus becomes, how can you optimize that? The second one, and I'll echo what John was mentioning, was just working with a lot of micro influencers, just understanding the type of flight that you can have in terms of the micro influencers, and then some of the larger influencers. I've seen that work extremely well. But I do believe that kind of ties into the whole community that's about to move forward, where there's going to be a lot of users that will eventually be picked out from certain titles, who will eventually become influencers. And I think that we'll start seeing maybe one or two really large figures, whether they're known in the gaming community or outside of the gaming community, that will probably announce that they have an exclusive deal with a gaming studio. And that will start to shift a really big thing in the industry, where the largest gaming studios will start to incubate an influencer hub. And they'll have a creator studio, and they're going to have partnerships with all the ad platforms, and that's going to give them a significant advantage over the next 2 to 3 years until other titles figure out how to adapt to that.
Eddie keeps dropping these thought grenades on us.
Yeah.
And I love it.
I had it in prep. He's got the whole idea now, the creator hub, and like these master creators that are going to have these deals that we'll be watching for, John. I'm still trying to digest the one thing, though, the show a creative that's not quite the game.
Yeah, I think there's some risk there, obviously, if somebody gets in the game and is totally different, but obviously it's working for some. The thing that I want to dive into just for a moment, Eddie, and others chime in if you're doing similar things, is, you talked about the analytics of seeing how long somebody is actually watching an ad. I mean, we're not just talking click-through rate. We're not just talking viewability. We're not just talking conversion rate. You're actually checking in-ad analytics of how long somebody's watching, what's happening when they click, and you're correlating that to LTV and ROI, it sounds like. That's pretty significant. What kinds of technologies are you using for that?
Yeah, I'd say the popular tracking platforms that I believe that everyone has pretty much used up until this point, like Adjust, Koetsier, but there have been teams that I've seen where they use that as a reference point, because those platforms, they're great, of course, but they use those as a reference point to actually benchmark what they're building internally as a proprietary system. I've seen a lot of brands start literally just showing a dashboard where they're focused on just a couple key metrics. What's the daily active users? What's the retention rate? What's the actual growth of the company in terms of revenue? What's the ROAS? And then right next to it, they have the velocity of every single one of those figures on a month-to-month basis, on a quarterly basis, even a daily basis if they're really focused on a soft launch. But the reason that they're focused so much on the velocity is that because if they don't catch that quickly, then they won't be able to determine which ads could potentially go viral. And sometimes that can be a really strong indicator, especially if they're doing rapid testing with a significant amount of budget. It's allowed them to just have multiple ad accounts that are focused on much smaller budgets. So instead of traditionally spending maybe like tens of thousands of dollars, I've seen them be able to calculate with pretty high statistical significance and finding some of these winners within $500 to $1,000 spend. So that's something that I've seen, and I definitely have encouraged other brands and the data teams to really look at, because it's entirely possible, whether the strong indicators are click-through rates and install, but definitely triggering the first significant monetization event in the app. That's a user base that should be scrutinized very early on.
Dave, any thoughts to add there?
Yeah. I mean, Eddie's absolutely right that for us, the average watch time is extremely important. So what we found with one of my clients, Pluto TV, they were putting the brand kind of messaging right up front for the first 2 or 3 seconds. But the average watch time for a lot of our Facebook campaigns was like 3 or 4 seconds. So they were missing all of the great content. So what we did is we flipped it around and we went right into the titles, the actual shows that were, and that made a huge difference, because you got to have a thumb stopper. I mean, people are going through their feeds so quickly. So that first 2 or 3 seconds, I mean, honestly, the first 1 to 2 seconds is so important. And so we found to really make sure that first couple of seconds is so super punchy and will stop their thumb. That's helped with us a lot.
Thumb stopper. Hey, Peggy, maybe super glue.
Yeah, seriously. But I'm letting this go. Think about, John, the velocity. This is a new sort of blended metric. We said at the start, a couple shows back, actually for months, that marketers would have to come up with new metrics. They would have to invent them to make sense. The velocity and the number of seconds it takes to the first monetization event, I see that. But for brands, Dave, I'm trying to imagine what it is that would tell you a winner or a loser, because there isn't really a monetization event.
With a lot of,
or not immediately.
Yeah, not immediately.
He's lucky. Eddie's got the games.
Yeah.
That'll happen. We are hooked and we are moving. I'm not going to move so much necessarily on a shopping app or a fintech app.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Shopify. I mean, we've got 14-day trial, and so oftentimes we have to wait for that to hit. But really, the way we do it is we find early events or early indicators that are proxies to LTV, and we optimize toward those. I can't go into exactly what those are for Shopify, but bottom line is you want to make sure that you're really tightening that feedback loop, and so you're finding some kind of event or something early on before the actual monetization event that is highly correlative to LTV.
Super cool. I'm looking at all the topics that we have left that we want to cover. We had like 30 minutes budgeted for this time, and we're way the heck over already.
We didn't get brand performance either.
I know. We have so much else. I know that you guys want to talk about more. I know Eddie wants to talk about Web3 and gamification. We want to talk to you about that. I know, Jonathan, you want to talk about connected TV, smart TV, and Roku. And Dave, you got lots to talk about automation and alpha.io. You know what? I want to talk to all you guys about all that stuff. Can we book you back and have a specific conversation about those things so we can actually get in depth on those things, because there's so much more to talk about. I'm seeing a nod from people, so I'm thinking that we can do something like that, Peggy. I think that'd be cool, because then we can go deep in those rather than give somebody 30 seconds to chat about something. So what I want to do, Awesome. What I want to do is I want to move to our last thing, and this is Mobile Heroes Uncensored. Guess what? And you heard the last word, right? It's uncensored, right? So we are looking for your least censored opinion about mobile marketing today. Nobody needs to be afraid of getting fired. It won't happen. Least censored opinion. What is it? Eddie, we're starting with you.
User acquisition teams are getting very lazy. That's what I'll say. And the reason I say that is compared to about maybe 7-8 years ago, they had to use a lot of sophisticated practices in terms of the technical side or launching a variety of campaigns. It's not really their fault, because the algo has kind of learned from all the human actions, and it's taken those and created automated platforms, especially on Meta and even on the other platforms. But I have noticed that the culture of user acquisition has kind of relied too much on the algo, and it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's led to the headlines that have said, hey, our machine's taking over. Is the user acquisition field kind of like not needed anymore because the system is doing that? I will disagree with that for the longest time, and I still keep on relaying this back to the team that we've done countless tests with black boxes and running against the algo. The human has won almost 99% of the tests, because there comes a time in a certain round of testing where the decision, it can't be objective. There has to be a human element in the decision, because the machine will only look at the numbers. The human will make the decision that can actually lead to a certain type of growth or product development that can shift the company that no machine can ever do. So that's kind of my biggest thought on the industry right now, where I encourage the user acquisitions teams and even paid media teams to not rely so much on the algo, because you still are the ones that created it, and we're not going to Skynet yet. And there's so many more things that we can definitely do to kind of combat that.
And Eddie swings for the fences. I love it, love it, love it. That's awesome. Guess what? That algorithm is owned by somebody. That black box is owned by somebody, and that somebody is not you. And it's optimizing for something. And some of that is good for you, but some of that is good for somebody else. And the percentage might differ. So interesting. Dave, we're turning to you. Your least censored opinion on the state of mobile marketing right now. Something in mobile marketing or mobile advertising.
Yeah, I mean, this applies to mobile advertising and web advertising, actually. But UA teams are really not spending enough time on conversion and monetization. And a good example of this is that we have some clients, they're spending over $1 million a month, but their landing pages and their app store pages have not changed in literally 2 years. And so they're just spending all of this money, in some cases, at almost like a brick wall, in some cases, where it's just the traffic is not working for you if you're not investing into conversion and monetization. So I would advise these teams to, let's take, if you have $1 million budget, carve off $100,000, move that into a team that's going to be focused on engineering and conversion optimization, ASO, whatever it takes. That other $900K is going to be way more profitable if you do this right.
Love it, love it, love it. I mean, Peggy will sign up for that 100K. I'll sign up for that 100K. I bet you I can change something that hasn't changed in a
You're
year.
hired.
You know what?
I'm surprised that people are flushing it and not noticing it. So that's a shocker, Dave. So we got the UA teams are lazy, and we've got the teams aren't optimizing for conversion. No. Jonathan, what aren't UA teams doing? No, I'm just kidding. Continue with it.
No, go ahead.
Jonathan, let's get them.
Well, I will definitely agree with Dave. There are an app that I've seen whose at least App Store page has not changed in a year. And it's still the same right now, fall imagery that it was showing this time a year ago. So 100% on that one. I would actually say for myself, when I started into this space, getting this wealth of data and so many things to play with, etc. I could never picture myself in the future actually being like, oh, well, it would be fine without all of this. Let's go back to basics and let's reinvent the wheel and just challenge ourselves because it's better. But you know what? At the end of the day, as just someone who scrolls through the same apps we all do, I don't mind it. I don't mind that there's a bigger focus on privacy. I think it's definitely something that I feel very strongly about now as more things have come to light, I would say. So didn't expect to be standing here today saying that, but just really pushing ahead and taking care of consumers, I think will earn brands' trusts in a longer way anyway.
Love it, love it, love it. We said it last show. We're saying it again. The 3 martini lunches are coming back, baby. So we'll see how that goes. But Dave, Jonathan, Eddie, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks again that you were to come back, because we didn't even touch the really super cool stuff. So I'm psyched. I'm pumped, as John would say.
Awesome. See you guys soon. And thank you to all listeners. We really do appreciate you. Hope you're enjoying it. Let us know on social if you are.
And let us know if you want to come, and we'll have you on the show. If you're a mobile hero or you know of someone who is, then fill out the interest form over at shorturl.at/JKSKT.
Also, Liftoff has a Slack for mobile heroes and people in the mobile ecosystem. There's a link on the screen, and if you're listening to the podcast, it's at info.liftoff.io/Slack-signup. It's pretty cool. There's smart people there, and you know what? They probably need you too.
And you have probably been completely blown away by all the insights on this show, and you want your transcript, and you can have it because the transcripts are over at Liftoff's website. Go to liftoff.io, click on Heroes, and then click on Podcast.
I actually personally love transcripts because I read way faster than people talk. So that's a great way to get insights really, really quickly. Until next time, this is John Koetsier. Thank you so much for joining.
And this is Peggy and Salz signing off from Mobile Heroes Uncensored.